Hi, everybody. So really quickly, I wanted to go over a variance analysis review so that you are amply prepared for your Petersen Pottery case study. So let's jump right in. This should be a review. This should not be anything new to us. So let's start with materials variances. Now notice I have two diagrams or two charts up here. So um, this is a chart and this is a chart. Notice they are for two different things. The top chart is used when materials purchased equals materials used. So that's what we like to call the normal chart. So it's the one that just kind of lays down like an E on its back, and we calculate our price and our quantity variance or purchased and used variance for materials. Now, if purchased materials do not equal materials used, we can't use the normal diagram. Okay, so when purchased materials do not equal used materials, we use what I call the weird diagram. So you notice the weird diagram has two pegs in the middle. Oftentimes you might see this chart drawn this way. Okay, so still notice there's two pegs in the middle. I like to use this weird looking diagram because it signifies in my brain that I really have two pegs in the middle that are different. So in this case, the quantities here are based on materials purchased. Okay, so those two quantities would be the quantity of materials purchased. Whereas this quantity would be the quantity of materials used. All right, and then we would calculate our standard quantity and standard price as usual. So remember what I told you before. Standard quantity, the definition that I like to use is what should have happened at the actual level of production. So two pieces in that definition. What should have happened, so how much materials should have been used per item or per unit, and then you multiply that times the actual level of production. So you can think of this peg as your flexible budget peg. So it flexes to the actual level of production at budgeted prices. Okay, so that's what we're looking at there with materials variances. So let's briefly look then at our labor variances. So see, it's the normal diagram, nothing new or fancy about that. So we're calculating our rate or price variance and our usage or efficiency variance, and then our total flexible budget variance. So now one thing I do want to point out, I'm going to go back to the materials variances really quickly. Notice when materials purchased equals materials used, we have a flexible budget variance. But when materials purchased do not equal materials used, we do not have a flexible budget variance because you can't combine these two variances, price and quantity variances, because they're based on different quantities. So you can't combine them together. So don't put a flexible budget variance if materials purchased do not equal materials used. All right, so back to the labor variances here. Again, nothing new. So I just wanted to point out that you definitely want to make sure you include the labor variances here. And you can have multiple materials that you're calculating variances for, and you can have multiple labor that you're calculating variances for. So it doesn't mean you just have one diagram for each one of these things. Um, but one thing I'll point out while we're on this screen, for our Petersen Pottery case study, remember, nothing handwritten is accepted. So you will have to draw these charts because I do want to see these charts for the calculation of your variances. So the easiest way I think would be to use cell borders in Excel. And you can just simply draw this little chart right in Excel really easily. And I'll also remind you, make sure when you upload your case study that you check it out. If you export it as a PDF, for example, from Excel, make sure you view it before you upload it. You don't want to see half this chart on another page. So like this half would be on one page and then this half be on another page. That would not be good. So I stated that in the last case study. So you want to make sure you correct that issue this time and not lose any points for that. I didn't take off points last time, but formatting I will take off this time. So make sure that you pay attention to the way the case is formatted before you submit it. All right, so let's look at overhead variances. So remember, there are three charts for overhead variances. We have variable overhead, which looks just like materials and labor. We have fixed overhead, which has a spending and a production volume variance, and we have the total. So total's pretty simple. You just bring down the two spending variances. So if they're the same sign, you would simply add them and get the total spending variance. If they're different signs, you would get a difference and bring down the sign that is associated with the largest number. There's only one efficiency variance, so we bring that down here to our total overhead. There's only one production volume variance, so we bring that down to our production volume. Then we can calculate our total flexible budget variance by combining the spending and efficiency variances. And then to get our total overhead variance, we have two ways we can do that. We can combine the three overhead variances there together, again, watching the signs, okay? Or we can combine the flexible budget variance and the production volume variance to get the total overhead variance. Now, one additional thing I want to point out here is sometimes you'll be given a normal, expected, or budgeted volume, something along those lines that sounds like something that was planned, a planned volume, or denominator level. You may be given that. That is only used one place in all of Pegdom, and that is right here in budgeted. Okay, that budgeted peg on fixed overhead variance. So I point out this right here is why it's used there. Sometimes we need to use this number to find the standard price. So for example, if you're given the total budgeted fixed overhead cost and you're given the quantity, the budgeted quantity, you could divide those two to find the standard price. And then you would use that over here on your peg 3 to use that as the standard price. Okay, so I hope that is helpful to you in working through your Petersen pottery case study. Again, if questions arise, please let me know what those are. Again, nothing handwritten, so make sure everything is computer-based, preferably Excel, and then you can just export it as a PDF. But again, remember, make sure nothing bleeds on to another page. If something should all be on one page together, make sure it is. Okay, good luck on your Petersen pottery case. I can't wait to see them.